Hey everyone, this is ScrapComputer here. This guide's going to be covering pick syndrome. So pick syndrome is a player who will attempt to make a pick on the enemy team or one of the enemy players regardless of how much help they have, the circumstances, or even if it's a good idea. They only have one subject in mind. That's so-called getting a pick on the enemy player. They don't care how they get it. Now, the worst proprietors of this kind of playstyle are the mainly hook-based players. So think of this and how many times you've seen a thresh support run around by himself trying to land hooks on a player to make a pick, then complain about you not following up, or land a hook and then tell you that you're playing bad for not being in the right spot or following him. Or even worse, they make a pick on the enemy team, come around the corner and you all die. So this video is not going to only cover how to avoid pick syndrome, it's also going to tell you how to avoid doing mistakes in general and how to make picks correctly so no mistakes will happen. This is a simple video, but even the best players can forget these simple rules for making a pick. The rules. So there are a few rules in making a pick that you must follow. Rule number 1, the enemy team's position. Now this is surprisingly the most important one. The higher elo you go, the more you realize the importance of this. Not every pick is free. A pick is getting an isolated player out in the open or in a bad situation, not using an Ash Arrow to engage in desired support to find your team are waiting around the corner to counter engage on you, possibly putting you in a bad spot. When you make a pick, you normally clump all together and focus fire all of your abilities on one target. Additionally, this basically puts you in a bad spot. Then after you've made the normal pick, you've all clumped together, the enemy team can then just counter engage. You've used everything on one target and now you're all clumped together. The counter engage can be really nasty. You're left with your pants down after a pick. Remember that even if you kill the target, you could lose a 4v5 afterwards because you're down all of your abilities. The enemy are in a good position, they've got all of their abilities up and you're all clumped together. Don't make a blind pick if you can. Try and keep an eye on as many enemy members as possible. If the whole team's missing and there's one person sitting in the middle of the lane, that's not a pick you're meant to go for until someone shows their face. Rule number 2, have support. It is kind of funny how often, and I know every player does this, even extremely high level players, they basically will think to themselves, oh dear, I'm trying to make a pick and this guy's out of position, but I'm the only one in position to do anything about it. You've got to remember, just because a player's in a bad spot and only you're there does not necessarily mean it's a good idea. Basically, if you're in doubt of a 1v1 or you couldn't really do it yourself, you're the support, for example, a support blitzcrank, even if the enemy AD carry is sitting there with their screen monitor turned off, hit the S key and they're just standing there, if you're the only one there, there's not really much you can do. You've got to remember that. Try to basically, before you make any sort of pick, look around and say, who's here to support me? Basically, now I know I'm totally guilty of walking around as an Ash looking for ultimate picks, landing an arrow, then realizing I'm the only one to support myself, or basically only my support is there. Before you look for a pick, look around and ask yourself, is there enough of my team to support the pick, and just follow it up basically. Just make sure you're not by yourself making picks. Rule number 3, follow up range. This is a mistake every single elo is guilty of. Bronze, to challenger, to even professional level play. This mistake can be seen commonly, very commonly. Of course, the higher you go, the less you see it, but it's still there, it's still prevalent. An overextended engage is, for example, a Malphite who flash and then ultimates at max range to hit a full 5 enemy team, and yet his team is left, in this case literally in the dust. Before you engage, think, will this engage range be too much for my teammates to follow on? Before you try to make a pick, think to yourself, is this range too much? If I hit this Ash Arrow at this range, will my team be able to follow up on it? Is it just too far away? And this is a really simple calculation, but you can be in the heat of the moment. You can throw out that Ash Arrow thinking that, oh look, the enemy AD carries out of position, I can get them. But sometimes it's just not a good idea. For Amumi, Ashe, Sion, Talia, Vi, Zac, and a ton more champions, you have to carefully consider if the range is going to be enough. A good pick isn't always about landing, or a good engage isn't always about landing a 5-man Malphite ultimate. It's about setting up your team for a slam dunk. Throwing the ball out 10 meters isn't ahead of your team, isn't really going to set anyone up. Although it looks good and all, it's not going to help anyone actually winning the game. Exceptions for assassins and solos. If you're an assassin, champion like Rengar, Zed, or a solo champion like Fiora who can basically fight a ton of people by herself, you can ignore rules 2 and 3. But rule 1 is your bread and butter. You have to know where your enemy are so you don't get caught out trying to kill an enemy and solo them. If you're a top laner or a mid lane assassin, try to basically find out where you can make a pick and just make sure you've got vision on the enemy champions. Rules 2 and 3 aren't really applicable to you all so much unless you're a tank. This basically is your main issue. If you're an assassin player, you're a solo player, and you're always getting killed by trying to make picks, this is your issue. Start looking at your map, and you'll start making more picks and more kills. So in summary, before making any pick, think of the following 3 things. Enemy. Look in the map. Where are the enemy? Is a counter engage possible? Who's accounted for? Are they by themselves? Support. Ensure your team are with you. Range. Am I the only one on my team who's in range to follow up? Look at your enemy. Are your people behind you? Is the range decent? 3 things, very simple things, not too hard to remember. Enemy, support, range. If you remember these 3 things, you will always have a good pick. Always have a good pick in your hands. So one last time, enemy, support, range. If you remember these 3 things, you'll always have a good pick in your hands and make great picks, not just hidden hopes. Due to picks being the best way of getting back into the game or pushing it for 100% victory, this video is pretty important. Although pretty fundamentally basic, it is very, very important to ensure that you can play well. Enemy, support, range. That's a very simple formula. Enemy, support, range. If you just remember that, it's really simple, and it actually even sounds pretty good together. So if you just remember these things, that will be all you'll need to make great picks. And that's it for the video, guys. Basically, this video was all about the fundamentals of making a pick. Although, once again, it's a pretty simple concept. Like, most people know these things. It's very easy to forget them very, very easily. If you're a new player, you'll not know about them realistically at all. Or some people just didn't think about these at all. I seen this in the LCS recently. Like, we see overextended engages like really badly, and it's just wow. It's even in that level of play. So I thought I'd make a video on it. And that's it, guys. If you like the video, like it, dislike it, dislike it. If you like the content, you can subscribe. And if you think it's horrible, I totally dropped the ball in there. I'm totally wrong. You can unsub, I'm totally fair. Beyond that, guys, have a great day, best of luck in the Rift, and I'll see you guys next time.